Well, it is Friday, SMITE fans, and that means competitive SMITE is back, and we're going to kick it off with the SOC finals over here in Europe. My name is Dolson. Gormizer is with me to guide me through the SOC finals. Gore, we have what should be a competitive matchup between the Triangles and the Herberts over here in EU.
It's the names themselves. We've been kind of making fun of in the last couple of minutes because they're funny as they are. But I will say the players that are on the teams are serious when it comes into it. So I'm actually really excited to see what they're going to be able to bring to the fray and into the mix. A lot of people, I think the biggest names you'll remember, like Sarpei, who has played on console in the past, Vaporish Coast, who was the Penta Kid. Like they have a lot of names and a lot of history here. So I'm expecting still a lot out of them.
Yeah, let's waste no time. Right into picks and bans we go. And not much has really changed. There haven't been any changes, so I imagine the meta stays remotely the same from what we've seen in the SPL, SCC, and down here in the SOC as well. Slight difference, though. It seems there's more of a prevalence of the solo carry potential gods, notably the Bakasura at the SCC, SOC level, maybe more player dependent. But a strong ban nonetheless here from the Herberts.
I was wondering, having things, you ban out Bakasura, you ban out the Nemesis, those make sense to me. Camazotz, I think, makes sense. Freya, Hercules, Persephone, all 6 of them that come down to the bans line up with, yeah, those are strong, you want to deal with them. It was the Oleron that I was really curious about as to where he was going to go and who was going to pick him up, because a lot of what we see Oleron and the progress we see for Oleron comes down as team play, and so I was wondering if the Triangles or the Herberts were going to be confident in it, but up against a Cthulhu, it's still going to be pretty difficult for them.
Yeah, what the Herberts have just told us is that they prioritize the Cthulhu and what he brings to the table more than maybe what we've seen out of the Oleron. I think there's been a pretty big conversation with Cthulhu specifically around whether support is his better off role, or maybe it's over in the solo lane. I think we'd argue that stats-wise, solo lane has seen a little bit better of a win percentage for Cthulhu.
Yeah.
And it looks like the Herberts agree with us as Yamoja is now locked in. You talk about early game pressure here, Gormizer. The Herberts got it in their first 3.
Yeah, I honestly really like what they're getting. Yamoja makes the duo lane just so hard to overcome. Raven is going to pressure you out early. He's really good at boxing. Once he gets his ult online, he's really good at chasing as well. And Cthulhu, I mean, we've been talking about him nonstop for weeks. He does top damage typically when he comes out of the solo lane. So I expect the Herberts to at least they have someone in place to affect all 3 lanes, expecting the Raven to kind of focus a little bit more on mid there, which kind of makes it earlier to, I think, swing here to whatever you feel comfortable with. Into mid, you can play something even as, well, I want to say relaxed as Poseidon, but we got to see that in the Pro League last week.
And, the Triangles, I think, Gore, have a strong draft to start off on their own. Obviously, Oleron sort of speaks for himself. Ganesh has started to see this rise as well out of the support role, so I think a good start there. Tough, I think, on the onset of that lane. Yamoja's going to exert a little bit more pressure right away than Ganesh maybe is able to put up with. But once you get to that Dharmic pillar point in the game, you're able to make massive impacts on these different fights. Scaling in the late game is kind of where Triangles are maybe looking here between an Oleron and now a Mercury locked in.
Yeah, if this was North America, I'd be worried for Triangles because I don't know if the game would last long enough to get to that period, but because it's Europe, I think this is this is a very deadly composition. I mean, Oleron, Morrigan, Ganesh, Mercury, all 4 of those so far just get better with time. A lot of the European meta, typically in the open circuit as well as there in the challenger circuit, is this kind of patient farming play at the very beginning that translates into these late game, explosive team fights. For the Herberts, I think their composition has to control this early, almost wants to end it in 25 minutes, or else the Triangles are going to start running away with it.
And they've got kind of a top-to-bottom sort of meta draft maybe from what we've seen, with the exception of this Agni now locked in. I remember Agni seeing a decent amount of play in the SPL last phase, a lot of that Venenu, mid laners here and there, locking him in. Not so much as of late, though, Gore. So what do you think of the Agni rounding out the draft for the Herberts?
So the one thing that I like about Agni is pretty much that he's always good, and it's like he's never necessarily bad. He always fits that middle ground where it's just like, okay, you probably could have grabbed a mage that could be a little bit better, maybe a little stronger in terms of their play or whatever they're going to bring. Scylla comes to mind when it comes down to just kill potential. Some others, like Ra, Poseidon, come to mind when it comes to maybe secure potential. But honestly, he's got a long-range stun, long-range damage, a burn that applies on it. In the middle of the team fight, he's not the guy that's going to come and just absolutely blow everything apart. He's just going to make sure everybody else has a successful team fight. If I'm Coast here, he is looking for that setup from the Agni.
They were hoping to find a little bit of it. Maybe a purple buff invade had the triangles duo lane extended a touch too far over towards that purple buff, but not to be, and everyone will return back to their standard starting off point. Now, kind of counter to that Agni Gore, I think it's going to be a lot of fun to follow Tori specifically on this Morgan throughout this game. Another god which has seen some play here and there, but the ultimate just so powerful, and especially when you look at what the Herberts have got. I mean, so much of the conversation in the draft is, wow, you're going to give away Cthulhu, you're going to give away Umoja. Granted, I don't know if you're transforming into Umoja all that often, but the ability to kind of counter out one of the most impactful gods in the game is certainly powerful, and it's what Tori's going to be bringing to this one.
I think it's going to be a lot of pressure from mid once that ult comes online, because like you said, well, you know, you give up this Cthulhu, but now you can beat Cthulhu, and if they're in solo lane dominating, then cool, now you're super powerful because of it. Hey, maybe you just want some good old-fashioned long-range stuns. Maybe you do transform into the Agni. Maybe you transform into the Umoja so that your team can have some healing to match up with it, right? Like, there's so many options, and that's just looking at what the Herberts have. That's not even looking at the fact that you could have 2 Mercuries running people down, or 2 Ganeshas, right. 2 sets of Dharmic Pillars to lock people away. I think the zone potential that this Morgan's going to bring is almost exponential here, and I'm really excited to see what the Triangles want to do with her as they transition it in the late game. So Tori, with all of these options, you know, it's always fun because I highlight, hey, you could do this, 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 or this. They're probably just going to go for kill potential.
Look at this score. Red buff invade by the Triangles, but Delta has only found death awaiting on the other side as Tengu picks up the first kill of the game. That was a fight the Triangles were looking to take. They make their way into the Herberts' red side of the map. It only ends in death.
There's only so many ways to walk away from that fight, and I think Delta was just trying to get back to lane, get back to Tori, get some farm back online, and just kind of, you know, hey, the invade didn't work. Walk away from it. Unfortunately, you get to see a perfect example of that burn from Agni.
And there was a small re-engagement here onto the Herberts' long lane. Watch out, Delta lurking around the corner. Maybe this one bodes better for the Triangles, and it sure does. Curve has now picked up the first kill of the game for the Chaos side, getting this all-run started off early.
I like this as well. Get the kills, you know, an assist. Unfortunately, your Mercury goes down a little bit earlier, but now assist for assist. He's only a little bit behind Sarpei in the jungle. You get that kill onto the Ola run, which I think is going to be even more important as the game goes on. Sanctified Fields, fantastic team fight ultimate ability. Definitely going to feel more impactful than the Rom Snipes. Rom Snipes can be hype, but they're not necessarily going to slow down the entire team and change the pace of a team fight. And so if Curve can just, well, stay on the right curve here, then he's going to be perfectly fine as this game continues to transition. I also like that these teams aren't afraid to fight. That's something that I like. Some teams in Europe, it just feels like they're not going to. And it's not even necessarily an afraid to fight. I mean, even Belt Slap will just kind of sit back and they'll be like, look, if you're not going to force us to take engagements, we're not going to take them because there's no reason to risk our life when we can get this guaranteed farm and force you into a bad position. So I like the fact that both the Triangles and the Herberts are looking for a little bit of blood, even though I feel like the Herberts kill was more gifted on a silver platter than them going out for it.
Yeah, so it was good for Delta, I think, to turn around and help out his team finding a kill a few moments later.
For sure.
And really, if you rewind the clocks, and, you know, it was really what surprised me, that kill sort of, you know, brought to you by the Triangles kill, brought to you by Mazega and Curve finding a small engagement, forcing Agent to burn the shell a few moments ago. And that's kind of the opposite, Gore, I think, of how we expected maybe the long lane to go early. I mean, Agent and Coast had certainly put on a good bit of pressure to start off. But Ganesh does start to hit that pivot point. I mean, you get the stun online, the silence online. I mean, you can take these small engagements, really tilt them in your favor if you have enough burst damage. And I'd say Olaran has a good bit of it to start off the game.
Oh yeah, and he, again, only gets better with time, and you're looking at that first item. He's already finished his lifesteal boots off, but now looking to potentially get that Ring of Hecate. And then the best thing about it, and the thing I love most, is where Titan's Fang fits in.
Lockdown onto Agent. Dharmic Pillars used. Up, down from Sarpei here, and he'll find the kill over onto Mazega. Tengu on the retreat, Delta on the chase, and the final shot will go over to the Mercury. Another 1-for-1 trade here. Could get worse, though. Back in the Harpy Pit is a Tory agent looking for the stun, doesn't find it instead. Lockdown, Delta, double kill here. Sarpé tossed backwards once more. The chase still on. Delta could find himself a third here. That's going to be the immunity from Sarpé to get out of the fight. It's a 2-for-1 trade. Triangle's out ahead.
Honestly, I think Delta could have continued chasing that. It might have been a risky call since you have Tongyu respawning, you have Coast kind of there in the jungle. But I feel like his cooldown, at least for his dash, would have been coming up pretty shortly. Could have continued the chase, maybe tried to find something, but instead they're going to look for something over here in the solo lane, at least forcing out Connor and forcing him into an awkward position. And that's the thing I think Cthulhu kind of warrants right now, right? Hey, if you shut down mid, you shut down duo, you can start putting a lot of attention onto that Guardian over there and make him just more uncomfortable than ever in solo lane.
I also appreciate the presence that Cthulhu brings. Walks up, 3 members of the Triangles, and they say, nope, that's a Cthulhu. We're just going to turn around and walk away. No more fighting for us here in this moment. And I think that's an interesting pivot point here, Gore, kind of talking around this Cthulhu, specifically in the solo lane, what we've seen, the success that he's found. Small engagement. In the meantime, over in the long lane, Vaporish Coast is going to take half of his HP. No one immediately on the rotation, so no kills abound just yet. But Sanctified Field's decently long cooldown there. But it's really kind of going back to that solo lane conversation, finding that point in the game when this Cthulhu can finally start to rotate through. Might have to be a little bit sooner if the Triangles keep finding kills. Vaporish Coast looking to snipe down one more on the curve, and the Ram is now struck. On the retreat is Mazega. River's Rebuke up and over. Dharmic Pillars is going to try to peel, but it won't do so as Agent picks up a kill as well. The long lane is a graveyard for the Triangles.
And Sarpé showing that the Raven isn't necessarily going to be the best one to try and lock down with that ability, and the burn damage almost enough here. One hit's going to be able to get it, and Tongyu's right back in the fight.
That was an attempted bait, I think. If Atori was able to stay alive just a little bit longer, it would have been a 1-for-none. But Tongyu does end up finding the kill. Second in the game after the early kill gifted over by Delta. Atori does have 3 assists here. But it's those 3 kills, I think, Gore, that are all on this Mercury that I think is going to be the most impactful here for the Triangles. I mean, you talk about, depending on what direction his build goes, you know, the 1-2 tap potential kind of this Mercury into the late game, getting that started 7 minutes in with 3 kills and assist, perfect start for the Triangles.
Oh yeah, and I think, again, he's looking to go into the Erendite here early, which, in my mind, it's just perfect for Mercury. It plays into his passive really well. And just all in all, hey, I'm going to chase you down better after ulting. Mercury's the fastest god alive. Everything about the item works out well for him. And so you're entering now this position where he's going to look to get more and more aggressive. And so far, still looking to get the farm to finish that off. But like you said, already 3-1-1. Like, being a part of, you know, all 4 of the kills your team has just means that you are going to, you know, graduate into that, like you said, 1-2 tap potential late game. And you're going to do it a lot faster than I think the Herberts would really like if you can continue this kind of farm potential. But that being said, he's still a little behind Sarpé in terms of experience. So as much as I like the ganks, as much as I love where he's going, maybe he does want to spend a little more time in the jungle trying to get things finished off for himself so that he can find these items and power spikes.
That's true. I mean, it really has been Delta that is starting off a lot of these fights, but you are giving up a decent amount of farm time in the meantime. So it is a 1-level differential, as you point out. Sarpé just a little bit ahead there. Looks like he's actually going to move his way over to the Harpy camp, so there's going to be a small meeting of the minds here between Delta and Sarpé. Stunned down and tossed back, half HP on the Robin, and the ultimate used by both junglers. Sarpé wins the 1v1, now trying to turn around and run away, but Atori is there, transformed. Now the dazzling offensive over on Nakana can't stun him down when he's massive the way he is. River's Rebuke from Agent as he is rotated over as well. There is no Dharmic Pillars ready to be used on the back end of this fight. That's the knock-up over on the Kha'Zix on the back end of it. 1-for-1, both junglers down.
Yeah, but Sarpé gets the 1v1, right? So that's the one that matters the most in my eyes. I mean, it's just so beautifully played. I want to use the term elegant just because of how low he got to get those immunity frames out, but that's the thing that Delta is going to have to remember in a lot of these fights. so that Sarpei does have one get-out-of-jail-free card in every fight where he is going to be able to damage you and keep himself alive a little bit longer. A little bit of a heal there for Raven as well, using his 3 for the root. So you have to be careful whenever you engage on just him. If you're Delta here, I think everything you did was the right way to play Mercury. You're just still Mercury and it's sub 10 minutes, so you're not going to win this fight against a Raven who is starting to excel here at this level 10 to like level 12 mark where he's really going to show a power spike.
And that was kind of the first time we really saw the solo laners engaged in some of these small early game skirmishes, largely because it was on their side of the map. Kha'Zix is the only one to pick up an assist there, but it is a 1-level lead for Kana over in that solo lane. I think this is an important pivot point, Gore, kind of the conversation around Amma and why she's been so highly prioritized versus Cthulhu and whether or not he is entirely beatable or not at all. It's going to be a fun solo lane matchup to watch. It is difficult, though, when Sarpei is going to start to kind of live on your side of the map. The root is down. Kha'Zix, a little extra sustained, but no chance you to run away from the 3 members of the Herberts that have collapsed upon you.
But I like the call. You see a huge rotation into solo lane. Oldest playing Smite. Okay, cool. Now we have to get the Gold Fury. If you don't get this, then all of a sudden that kill is just perfect for the Herberts. But now you get a little bit of retaliation. You get something that's pulled back in your favor. I feel like a kill plus Pyromancer, you know, I have to see how it always comes out because it depends on how worthwhile the kill was. The solo laner, pretty worthwhile early on. I feel like it comes out slightly positive for the Herberts, but only maybe because of the kill. Pyro does not equal Gold Fury here, and I think that's going to be a big one for the Triangles, at least to keep them alive.
Well, Porsche Coast, I don't think, realized Mazega was around the corner. This Ram's still looking to take this fight. He's actually going to roll forward. Look at the map. Nobody from the Herberts in range because they found their way over into the solo lane. Kha'Zix has to back away. No dazzling offensive. Curve ends up going down in a 2v1. Nonetheless, that was the ultimate used by Coast. Kana's going to grab a kill as well. Bad to worse across this map. If you're the Triangles, Delta looking for the stun down. Didn't find it. Nearly got the final tap of damage. Vaporish Coast Gormizer somehow stays alive. Atori is rotated through, transformed into the Amaterasu, uses the dazzling offensive. Won't end up picking the kill there. A couple kills scattered across the map.
Yeah, Kha'Zix is just having a bad time. Like, there's no other way to highlight this. This solo lane, because they were able to get the Morrigan just a little behind, get the jungler specifically and Delta a little behind, the Herberts aren't necessarily worried about any of their other lanes. And we just saw what Coast did, so of course they're not worried about Duo. And so they're pressuring out Kha'Zix every chance they get, and now you have this Cthulhu just hyping it up. And look at this, Dave. The fact that he just walked at 2 people the whole time. Yes, the ult is going to give him a little bit of that range to help seal the deal, but at the end of the day, Coast didn't care. There's a Ganesh,
no.
There's an Olaron, and he just walked at them anyway because he knew Sanctified Fields was down. And then unfortunately for Delta, by the time he finally made that rotation, he misses. He's unable to confirm the ult. He doesn't get the dash. He has the hit right afterward, but it's not enough damage to find the kill. And they didn't want to dive that tier 1, so Coast gets away with murder. Yeah,
Curve, we haven't been able to see the Sanctified Fields used in a team fight yet, or really impactfully in a team fight. It's been a lot of get Coast away from me, and it hasn't really worked out up to this point. Mazega trapped into the River's Rebuke, beautifully used there by Agent. So it's going to be a killing spree now for Vaporish Coast. A double kill suddenly as Delta tries to re-engage on the fight. Sanctified Fields catches out 3 of the Herberts, but Sarpei is going to get that kill easily. Gore, this game has suddenly busted wide open.
Yeah, we're starting to see why this composition is so good, and it's just because it hits at power spike, I want to say a minute 8, and now has very easily continued it. I mean, the graphs show it better than I can explain it. It just very much went into their favor. Coast is playing out of his mind at 4-0-2 right now, but 6,700, you know, floating between that 6,500 and 7,000 experience mark, being able to pressure a tier 2 14 minutes into the game. And nobody on the Triangles is able to make a big difference here. Kha'Zix hasn't been able to rotate into a team fight because he's been shut down over there in their lane. You haven't had Atori or Delta make a big swing because they're just slowly but surely falling behind. And now, unfortunately for the duo lane, they're in the same position. Their level lead has been completely given away here. And now the Herberts, they just get to control the pace of the game.
Yeah, this is, you know, it's hard enough to lane against a Cthulhu anyway, much less when you're already 3 levels behind. So Kha'Zix's a uphill battle, to say the least, and then a 2-level difference over in the long lane. Coast is putting on an absolute clinic. He's gone for sort of that traditional hunter build, I suppose, if you know, traditional has any place in the current meta. It's the Devo's Gauntlet into the Atalantis bow. Looks like a little bit of crit after that. Remember, Gore, before the Hecate changes, Rom was really sort of at the forefront of this hunter meta, so not surprising seeing the 4-0-2 15 minutes in.
And I think a lot of the items play well into him. I mean, I love attack speed on Rom personally. Even though he has a stim, it's always nice just to hit harder, faster. And a lot of these items, especially in like a crit meta, and like you said, he's looking to go into at least, I would assume, an early rage. It plays real well into it. You add potentially like a fail nod into there for when he gets down from those snipes, and there's a lot of turnaround potential for him to just set up kills. And I think Rom, again, brings in safety that other hunters just don't.
Well, Aegis buys about a couple seconds of life there for Delta, but well sought out. Not shallow enough ward coverage there for the triangles. You don't think you need it by your back harpies, but you sure do when Sarpé is having the game he has as well. 4-1-6 on the Herberts jungler. Could get worse. Look at this. 5-man collapse over onto the triangles. Sanctified Fields used this time by Curve, but he is being absolutely melted away. Sarpé has now found another kill. Last couple of minutes, Mizega knocked up. He's going to get rip-tided right back, but no follow-up there from the Herberts. Way back around is Atori here. Oni Fury being taken away. But maybe a snipe, an attempted snipe from Atori to try to steal it away. It won't be in time, and he will dodge roll himself away. So clinically picking this map apart now are the Herberts. This Oni Fury should open up some of these remaining towers for the Herberts to grab.
The only reason they leave this Ganesh alive, there's no tier 2 tower over there. If you're the Herberts, you have more than enough kill potential to chase down a Ganesh over in the left lane. Except it takes more time to kill Mizega right now, and he's not as worthwhile as an Oni Fury. Like, it's one of those things that I love that call, because it's just like, huh, what do we get from killing this guy? Literally nothing? Okay, let's go kill the Oni Fury. Let's control the map. And I love that kind of heads-up awareness. Yeah, it's 14-5. It could be 1-4 right now with the Herberts trailing in kills, but their map control is just giving them so much over the triangles. Part of the reason the fights are going the way they are is because the Herberts have these Oni minions now that are going to help push up the lanes. They have control of Pyromancers whenever they feel like they're losing grip. They've gotten tier 1s in left and right, so they can get aggressive on those sides and into the jungle here, and the triangles haven't been able to defend any of their own buffs, or at least anything safely in their own jungle, because the Herberts could just be right around the corner at any given time.
They're going to start up the Fire Giant. Mizega in range. Curve over in the long lane, taking down the Herberts tier 1 tower over there. Pulled off. The FG have the Herberts, but they found 2 members of the triangles right for the engagement. Dharmic Pillars just to slow things down, but doesn't buy much time as Tongu has found the kill. Atori remains in the mid lane. It looks like towers against maybe an FG call. There's a rotation way deep behind the Herberts from this Morrigan. Curve remains in the long lane. FG down to half HP. Kha'Zix being looked at by Kana up on the high ground there. Delta rips through thanks to the ultimate up to the sky. Goes Vaporsh Coast trying to snipe down the damage onto Kha'Zix, and he's found it. Delta turns tail, heads the other way. Atori is rejoined to the fight now. Left side Phoenix being looked at by Curve in the meantime. The Herberts need to win this fight to maybe make this one worthwhile. Up, down goes Sarpé, and down goes Atori. 3 members left alive by the triangles, but as a left side Phoenix exchanged for a couple of kill score.
Man, it's so hard to call worth for the Herberts because they lose a Phoenix, but they played that so well. I mean, the fact that Coast stays alive and all that, the way they'd get those kills turned around, it's hard to argue against them. At this point, being the better team, the way they played that was just smarter all around, but they didn't have Olorun in there for the triangles. He was split pushing. He gets that Phoenix. So even though the team fight didn't look great for the triangles, the call, I think, looked right, because no Fire Giant was picked up for the Herberts. The fact that they had control, it doesn't necessarily exist anymore. Everyone's respawned, save for Atori now. So you can get right back into the Fire Giant pit. You can contest this one, this time with 5 people and Fire Minions pressuring the Herberts down.
Yeah, if there's any time for the Herberts to start this FG, it's now before those fire minions have fully made their way into the base. Dharmic Pillars, just the corner, maybe scraping against the Fire Giant. The Herberts have locked down the FG. Down goes Mezega as well. Kha'Zix on full retreat. Look at Kana, the presence that he's bringing. Delta, Curve, neither can participate in this fight because there's a Cthulhu running at him. Kha'Zix has to turn around as well. Looks like maybe a small chase here, Gore, but it's a Fire Giant, full 5 for the Herberts.
You can't ask for much more. If you're Kana there, you're like, hey guys, I'm zoning 2. Please just get the Fire Giant. Like, even then, it seemed like it was close to being contested. I think Kha'Zix and Mezega just a little too soon on their entry into the pit. And it's the hardest thing to do, Dave. When you're looking at it, even if you have ward coverage, if you're lucky enough to be able to keep one in the pit because of maybe a misplaced sentry board from the other team or what have you, then you can at least try to gauge it, but it's so difficult to choose or determine how fast they're burning it, how long it's going to take them, how long that's going to compare to me getting in there. And so I think it was just a little bit too fast on the trigger for the Triangles to jump in. Like the call, though. Again, once they get that Phoenix, now they've pressured them out. Unfortunately, they do ultimately lose that Fire Giant with not much to show for it after this. And once that Phoenix respawns, there's not going to be a lot of hope for them in terms of aggressing yet until this Fire Giant buff disappears.
Man, Mezega has been on the receiving end of basically every engagement from the Herberts, and this one is certainly no different, but it's 2 kills turned around suddenly by the Triangles. Curve has done so much damage in this engagement. Tongu unable to turn things around. Kana has found one as well. 3 for 2. Triangles out ahead of this engagement. Double stun. This time around, Agent full-on retreat mode, but Delta is going to be on chase. Itori just trying to sidestep this one. Agent has finally dropped down, and it's a lowly Kana making his way away from the fight. Big fight for the Triangles to shed off 4 Fire Giant buffs.
Dave, I'm a fool. I should have looked at the items before I made any sort of call for the turnaround potential of the Triangles, because now Delta has 4 stacks on his Rage, 1. So he just got into a fight where that's going to make a big difference. But he also has finished a Deathbringer. That 1-punch, 2-punch potential we were talking about earlier is now online for this Mercury. I was thinking we still had a few minutes before he was going to be able to finish that off. But alongside that, you got the Sledge for Kha'Zix in terms of sustain. Tori didn't get to stay alive through that. Coast, is unfortunately traded out for the Oleron as well. So maybe you're not having everybody live on your side here if you're Triangles that you would like, but you're still picking up kills, you're still shutting them down, and now your junglers hit that Curve potential. Typhon's Fang now finished for Curve as well. I think this is looking like a good spot for the Triangles, especially since now Kana's the only one that has that Fire Giant buff. You're pretty much right back to square one. The only thing you have to worry about is that Phoenix respawning, and unfortunately you can't do much about that yet. You might need to win another fight.
That's right, maybe another minute of push potential here for the Herberts. But that was kind of the threat, Gore, I think, that we've brought with us throughout this entire game. Going into it, we knew that the Herberts were going to control this early game. And don't get it turned around. I mean, it's even, at least gold-wise, but you look at the gods, we knew that the scale potential was going to be with this Mercury. Curve finally going to start coming online at some point. They forced Coast still matching the damage output of the Oleron quite well, but this is a fight the Herbert's looking to take over onto Delta, charging up that ultimate. Sanctified Fields from Curve. Back behind the Dharmic Pillars, rips through, but Kana doesn't care. Down goes Sarpé. 1-for-1 trade as we stand. River's Rebuke up and over. Kha'Zix has found the backline. Vapor's Coast trying to kite away. Has to use the beads, and now it's Cthulhu against 2 over near the purple buff. Still maybe a re-engagement, though, as Vapor's Coast, 10% HP, wants to move back in onto Kha'Zix, and he's doing plenty of damage there. Kana there on the follow-up. Double stun from Itori, but not enough as Dongyu has taken him down. Itori trades out one, though, onto Vaporish Coast. Big-time skirmish here from both sides, but Delta's still alive, and all you need are the crits to turn the fight around. But now Kana has gotten himself one. Gormizer, it's a 2-man fight from both sides, and it looks like that's where we'll finish off.
If you're ever wondering why Cthulhu is banned all the time, just that whole fight. They spend so much time around Kana, and still this guy doesn't die. Kha'Zix gets low, has to back off. Mazega gets low, has to back off. They're tanky, but they're still killable. Agent still in that same column with his opponents. Kana did not care what kind of damage was being thrown at him. I mean, not only did he stay in the fight, he stayed healthy. He's 5-0-5. He didn't back because he felt in danger. He backed because he had nothing else to do at that point. And so I think it really does come down to the fact that the Herberts, with this draft, specifically in what Kana is playing, are always going to have someone available. And unfortunately, Mercury, you just can't burn through him. You don't have enough penetration. The crit's going to be great against the squishies. That's why Tongyu, Sarpe, and Coast die so easily. But unless you get some pen online for this team, I expect Kana to continue being big.
Absolutely will. Every time the ultimate is up, at least. It really seems like
he'll be huge.
The game plan and kind of the lifeline of these fights hinges on Delta. I don't think that's any sort of news here. 8-5-4. More kills than the rest of his team combined, has participated in 100% of them. Curve has hit that power curve, to say. So the ult run will swing, despite what the KDA might say he has done up to this point. But it really, doesn't it kind of feel, Gore, like it's if Delta can kind of survive that initial onslaught from the Herberts and find the backline, then the fights are all in their favor. But it's when the Herberts can lock down this Mercury, kind of the rest seems like peanuts because they sort of run away with those fights. So I think this Fire Giant fight is going to largely be where the engagement comes from both sides. And if you can get rid of this Mercury early on. It is half HP on the Fire Giant. Kha'Zix moves his way in. Mazega off to the side as well. Dharmic Pillars melting away. The Herberts have finished it off, though. Double stun from Kha'Zix. Amaterasu has come to play. Down goes Vaporish Coast, getting that ROM out of the fight. So important early on. Delta hasn't found the ultimate, but he's found the stun over onto Agent. 4 down. Herberts, Kana just trying to run away. Can they add a 1 to the death column? They sure can. It's the deicide for the Triangles, 25 minutes in.
Great call from Hattori to turn into Delta as well. You have that double lockdown from a Mercury ultimate, plus you know he's the power curve that you want to be on. And I love this, Dave. Just run it down mid right now. You have 30 seconds before anyone comes in. I mean, you've got perfect control.
Yeah, I don't see a world where the Herberts are even able to respawn. There's this open Phoenix. Remember, it was Curve that pushed this one down. The base ready for the taking, and it's 15 to 20 seconds on all of the respawns. The Triangles, 6 kills behind in the kill feed, Gore, but they stay alive long enough to hit those power spikes, and this one is finished off. Kha'Zix, I think, massive dazzling offensive there in that final fight to take down Vaporish Coast almost immediately, really open the doors. And it was just biding their time, it seemed, through this one, and the Triangles are able to take game 1.
I think I can cover it in 6 words. Crit Mercury, Sanctified Fields, the Morgue. There you go. That's all they have that comes into it. You had mentioned how Curve, going into that fight, was 2-6, ended at 3-6. Didn't necessarily come out with the biggest slash line. Second highest damage on his team, though, and the Sanctified Fields, especially in the last 2 fights, were what really helped turn it around, specifically for Delta, but also I think for Hattori and for Kha'Zix to be able to get more aggressive into it. You get Delta in a good position early on to help find a lot of these kills.
Right.
Once he finishes that Deathbringer, they find their first 4-strike, then they get another one, and then they get another one. DJ Khaled decided to join the stream for a little bit and make sure that kept going for him. And it was just the exact way you see Mercury impact it. He goes from getting first-blooded from a failed invade to the reason his team's winning because he can just one-shot anybody who stands in front of him.
And see, I love the way Delta plays it, though. I mean, it's the ultimate risk-reward scenario, right, where you realize that if you can get some of these early kills, some of these early assists, I'm a Mercury that wants to be online later in the game. You know, if I'm throwing away a death early, but it turns around, maybe I get some kills here and there. The scaling is exponential, that's the word, I think. I haven't said that word in years, but Delta found it, whatever it is, the bell curve, I think, or the straight line. I'm bailing myself out of this one. Delta found himself that curve and was able to take this game on their side. Gore, I was curious what your thoughts on Hattori and this Morrigan were. Slow goings, I think, early on, but maybe hit a power spike with the rest of the team there towards the end.
Yeah, I was actually really interested to see, you know, we talked about at the beginning of the game what Hattori was going to do with this Morrigan and the ults that you could, like, man, you can be Cthulhu, you can be Amaterasu, and we saw one Amaterasu, but I think that call at the end, which was the Mercury transition, is the one that was the biggest to me. A lot of these stealth moments, get into the back, get a stun, see if you can get out alive, were really well played with just the base kit, but then making the call of, okay, Delta just ulted in, used his full kit, and now can only chase down people the good old-fashioned way by holding W as long as he can. But I can turn into him, ult, use my entire kit, and then change back into Morgan. Like, everything you had there, I think, worked out well. So the Triangles make a very good call in the very end fight. I think that's what helps take down not just Kana, but also Agent and a lot of the other people who are looking to be close to retreating there towards the end. And the Herberts recognize those two as huge problems as well. Mercury hurts, but the Ola run setting him up and the Morgan turning into him as well made it just, like you said, exponentially worse.
So it is exponential. I was right the first time and then tripped myself up. I was curious where the bans would go here because, you know, all things considered, Kana had a massive game on that Cthulhu, but taken away here by the Triangles, realizing they don't want to play with fire or demons, I suppose, 2 games in a row. Instead, it's the Nemesis that gets let through and now picked up by the Herberts here at Goremizer. Our first look at Nemesis here in this set, and we have seen plenty of data, I think, on Nemesis to realize she is quite strong in the current jungle meta.
Oh, yes, she is. I think there's a lot that comes down to, well, hey, you want to look at it, Malice plays in really well with her. I think her kit as it is, it's full of slows right now, and it's one of those awkward things that unless you're going to pick people, I would maybe argue like Yemoja that can give your team the ability to go away, or this one, Hebo, whose yellow carpet immunes you to slows, you're going to have a tough time with it. So I think the Triangle's already drafting well into it. But there's also Protection Shred in her ultimate that's going to help take down tanks. It's a very good combination here for Herberts.
Now, how about the Chronos here, Gore? I think mixed results is maybe the best wording that I can think of when I think of Chronos, where we've seen games in the SPL where he's kind of swung, and it's only a few games, so you know it's not like he's a pick ban every single set. But I think you're playing the risk-reward here. I think it's, you know, the right phrase to maybe use, where kind of falls by the wayside. You know, you have this Olarun, Freya tier of these magical ADCs, Chronos somewhere maybe a little bit further down, but still has the potential to do massive late-game damage.
Yeah, the way I look at it is there's kind of 2 tiers of magical carry, right? There's those that are good at boxing and 1v1s, and there's those that are good with teamfight ultimates. You've got Freya and Chronos in one, and then, you know, Olarun, Sol in the other. Olarun's ult does more than Sol's ult, so he's usually prioritized over her. Freya just hits harder than Chronos, so she's usually prioritized over him. But depending on what style you want to go for, that's what they're going to bring. Chronos doesn't have this big sweeping team fight kill ability, and I think Freya's ult, her safety in the whoop as well, just makes her better intrinsically. But you get a stun as Chronos. You have you know, the ability to stem not just your autos, but also get healing or get mana back, all sorts of things with your passive. And then, of course, you have your ult, which gives you that rewind back. So you have a lot of survivability in there, but a lot of time to get online to the point where you can impact anything.
Right.
Freya, you finish Hekate and you start feeling the punch. Chronos, you finish Hekate, then maybe you get a Typhons, then maybe you get a couple of other rings, then maybe finally your 5th item, you finish it, and now you're able to finally take a fight. That's always the problem that he's brought in.
Right, his team fight win ability is his auto attack button where he just swings, but that's a little bit later down the road. So the Herberts maybe trying to kind of flip-flop the meta conversation from game 1, scale themselves a little bit into the late game. Merlin absolutely shreds later on as well once you get a few items online. Now a Cupid locked in here for the Triangles. Plenty of magical damage throughout the first 3. Lock in, a little physical around the bend there. Gore, I think Cupid is actually a good starting off point here, moving into game 2. Curve, kind of hard pivot really from Vaporish Coast and Curve. You know, Vaporish Coast on the ROM in game 1 had a great game, all things considered, despite the loss. Curve had Olarun, some Sanctified Fields finally came online a little bit later. Fields of Love, I mean, still good in that team fight ultimate department. But Cupid, I think, has been a pretty hot topic, and actually, I think he's pretty good when it comes to this Hunter meta.
Yeah, I actually think right now the Triangles, it's almost flopped in it, right? The Triangles have a little less late-game carry potential. You look at the Habwa, and Delta is maybe the one that can make that work, but Merlin, you've got the Nemesis, you've got a Matarasu, you've got a Chronos. Late game, the Herberts will win. So it's almost the exact same timer, but flipped here. than what we got to see in Game 1. But this is where the pressure is going to come through. You've got stuns that can come down from Mizega here on the Emoja, and a lot of control that can come from the Cupid early on.
Well, I like that double stun from Agent. He's maybe set up for the first blood here. Body blocks from Curve prevent Coast from getting the kill, but Agent will find it nonetheless. The knockback onto Curve is there. Oh, one more shot of damage would have done it. But Big Porsche Coast has to settle for the lowly assist. This kill brought to you by Agent. Beautiful double stun to start off the game.
It's the question of Yemoja, like the power of Yemoja Cupid. The clear there should honestly be in control. But Hercules is the great equalizer, I think, when it comes to duo lane. We see it in the Pro League. It works for me, and that's how you know that it must be good. When you bring Hercules as a support into this lane, especially against maybe someone who either doesn't have the dash or they haven't been able to level the dash because they're level 2 here if you're Cupid. I think Curve was level 1 at the time. So, of course, he's not going to be able to get away. But you push him into the wall, it's a nice stun setup, and you're doing enough damage that whether or not you kill them, they, I think, get the best case scenario there where you get a kill and force the other to fall back. But most of the time it's just, hey, I'm letting my Chronos farm. And if Chronos can get a level, 2 levels, 3 levels eventually ahead of Curve here for Coast, then it's going to be an easy walk into the late game for him. It's when Curve is either keeping up or, maybe turns it around and gets ahead that things are going to start falling apart for the Herberts, and that's why Agent has to be that equalizer for him. He's the early game so that Coast can get to the late game.
Right, which is kind of funny considering, there's a Yemoja on the other side, but sometimes all it takes is that little extra push of aggression to kind of tip you over the edge, and that's what the Herberts have at least found for First Blood only a couple minutes into the game. There is about a 1 minute window, I think, here, Gore. 45 seconds if you look at that shell from Mizega. Curve has the beads coming back shortly after that, where Agent can be a little extra aggressive, maybe set up for another kill here in this lane. Potentially what he's looking for here. Has found the knockup over onto Mizega. The follow-up stun. Riptide knocks back one. Agent, one final auto attack won't have it. Porsche Coast has taken a good bit of damage on return instead. So Curve has done his part in maybe keeping Coast from following up. But that's always the threat here, Gore. 15 seconds till that shell. Nearly second kill in the game.
But Coast, I think, is having a very good early game here, right? Again, I think that's the thing Chronos needs to start out early on, utilizing your 2 to maybe keep some mana costs going in your favor, and he doesn't have any hesitation in using abilities for clear more than for kill, and I think that's something that's appropriate. Agent is the one who's setting up the kills. You don't have to care about anything else in the world if your Hercules is going to be able to do all of this, and it's why we see him not only banned a lot of the time, but so highly prioritized. And he just gets better with time. I mean, he's got a heal now that's going to be online at level 4. He's going to get the boulder at level 5, which is going to help either secure kills or objectives, depending on where they decide to put it. Then you get more health, you get more protections. It's a great time for warrior supports, and Hercules has been doing it the longest time. And this duo lane, as much as I like to keep harping on it, is just it's gonna be rough for the triangles. Honestly, I would have loved to have seen the jungler come over here, but unfortunately Delta's not playing anybody, Hebo, who can carry early on.
That's right, and now needs to help out his mid lane as Sarpei has just walked him down. Mizega does have the shell this time around, but this is what we saw last time. Curve running down Coast while Agent is engaging over onto Mizega. So half HP on 2 members of the long lane. Hunter for the Herberts, and it's the support over there for the triangles that's left limping away from the fight. But I think we got to talk about what we just saw from Sarpei.
Yeah.
Triangles looked like they were just trying to lock down their red buff there, and this Nemesis has found an early kill in the game. Won't have a chance to really dive into that one as Mizega has been stunned here, dodges a good bit of the damage. Look how low Coast is, though. Sidesteps the final bit, but has the ultimate, which will he return with. Like 10% HP there. Curve not in range to follow up for the kill. Agent has found the knock-up and the stun off to the side. Boulder shelled out this time by Mizega. That one was necessary. Maybe just to save the life of Curve. The action continues, Gore. Sparks flying over in the long lane.
Seeing Coast hit his ult and gain maybe 5% of his health back from where he was really made me nervous, because I'm like, if you don't end up in the middle of the lane there, you have to be so aware of where you've been standing. If you end up just slightly on the Chaos side there, you're dead. That's Curve's fight the entire way. You're going to be able to find that kill. He's very fortunate. Not only did he end up right next to Agent, but in a good position to put more pressure back onto Mizega. Not enough to get the kill again, but I think the way that they're playing this in the duo lane, it almost feels equal parts luck, equal parts aggression. Like they're getting aggressive and it's working out for them. And because they're winning so hard over there, because it's a Hebo in the jungle over here for the triangles, it's let Sarpei kind of off the hook. Tong Yu is Merlin, so nothing bad's going to happen there. This is a good fight to take.
Yeah, only good things from Merlin. Kana rotates over for the freest kill of his life. Kha'Zix was there as well, but unable to do much in terms of re-engagement there on that Wukong. So Sarpei sets up another kill, and I think well rotated by Tongu as well. Another character in this Merlin, kind of in that conversation of, you get a couple items online. Once you start fighting a lot in the Void stance a little bit more, you're going to be melting these low health targets, and Triangles learned that the hard way this time.
It's just difficult to get aggressive into this draft if you're the Triangles. I mean, late game, you've got Hebo damage, and that honestly can be a great equalizer. I think Atori as well as the Agni. Like, again, not as big burst magey as you expect from some of the other mages, but Agni's got a lot of damage to him. We got to see that a little bit last game, and I think we might have to see the Triangles rely on that here, but I don't know. Their draft, it feels solid, but I don't know if it's solid enough to take down what the Herberts have. I mean, 5 out of 5, let's say 4 out of 5. Kronos is kind of 4th on the list of magical hunters, at least that we've seen in the Pro League in terms of prioritization. So you get one of the best, if not right now the best, second best behind Cthulhu, solo laner. You get one of the most sought-after junglers, one of the most sought-after mids, one of the most sought-after supports, and one of the easily fall-backable, carries that you can have. I just think this draft from Herberts is going to, honestly, it might be the reason they can just coast into the late game.
Well, Kha'Zix does have the ability to find some small bully potential over on Nakana, has forewent the Blessing and instead right in to that Soul Eater. Agent looking to move forward over on the curve. Fields of Love, drop down, coast, beats out the stun, but look at the Hercules damage. See you later, curve. Delta thinking about a rotation through. But this long lane has been absolutely bullied from the onset by this Hercules. Now the rest of the Herberts are going to rotate through, crashing wave to disengage, but Tongu has the range there, and down goes Delta once more here in this game. 0-2 now on the Hebo. Mizega's return to kill. Agent slightly low here as well, and Atori will drop down the damage. Really, all things considered, Gore, 2-for-1 trade. Triangles maybe slightly ahead.
I mean, they get, I think, some big wins on this, but this is something, as I say this as a support player, chat, so know that it comes from my heart with love. But losing your support means nothing. If I die, like, when you're playing a support and you die, it maybe opens up some opportunities. Hey, no one can tank this team fight, so we can try to pressure it out. But the carries, the damage that's coming through, especially with the safety that like Sarpei's going to have, that Tong Yu's going to have, you're not stressed about it. Agent losing his life there isn't the biggest deal, but still being a 2-for-1, I think helps favor the Triangles. It's just unfortunately they can't turn it into anything, right? There's no Fury that they can then immediately go steal up because they just don't have the follow-up for it. And so I think that's where their issues are coming, where it's just like, you know what? You get a kill onto the jungler, very important, but you just don't have the damage follow-up to do anything else.
I guess dazzling offensive from Kana has maybe found a kill over onto Delta, but the 3-man rotation from the Triangles enough to lock down one more. I misspoke. It was actually a 2-for-2 because Curve fell to Agent kind of in a solo kill situation a few moments before that. So all things considered, it's a 2-for-2 trade if you look at a bit of a longer timeline there. Now, though, Kana maybe a little bit too comfortable in where he stands. He's going to get locked down by 3 members of the Triangles. Curve in a bit of an awkward spot. No beads here, but does have the ultimate. Fields of Love enough to slow down Agent, but there's the knock up. No knock back to be found. Mizega's going to rotate through as well. But it's this. You can already kind of get this vibe, Gore, of where Kana is feeling on this Amaterasu. Wants to start getting into the nitty-gritty involved in some of these fights, and I'm not sure how that bodes for the Triangles.
Yeah, it felt like a slow rotation for the Cthulhu overall, compared to what we were thinking we were going to end up seeing. But knowing that he wants to fight on this Amaterasu, I think shows them even better. I honestly love Amaterasu in terms of her passive being able to apply onto some of the big jungle buffs, stripping away protections if she decides to get onto Mizega or onto Kha'Zix. That's easy kills for her as well. But also, nice teamfight ultimate, good wave clear and damage. Like, she has the ability to take down a carry, sometimes even 2 carries if you can play it picture perfect, and they make a lot of mistakes in the process. But I think the way that he's going to impact the fight here is these rotations, because that's something that just flat out, Amaterasu is going to do better than Wukong. Wukong has a slow, attack speed slow, a stun, the ability to heal, and a lot that's cool in his kit. But none of it makes me think huge team fight ability. A lot of it is going to be set up in 1v1s or 2v2s to help his teammate.
Lots of skirmishing going on here, Gore. Vapourish Coast has to use the ultimate. This one will fully top off that health bar. Agent has found the knockback and looks for the stun. Unable to do so just yet. There was some engagement in the mid lane as well. Delta down to about 25% HP. Sarpei is going to strip away some of that backside jungle as a result and now rotate in behind Curve. And Mazega, River's Rebuke used. Sarpei just trying to find what angle he wants to use. Fields of Love back up once more. The dash from Curve enough to get out of the fight, but it's a stun down onto Mazega. The CC lock is enough here, and the Riptide will just send the Herberts closer to confirming that kill. Now the solo laners have started to rotate their way over. Kha'Zix is here, chunked down a good bit of damage over onto the Herberts. Can the Wukong turn this fight despite a 4v5 disadvantage? The health bars absolutely in favors of the triangles here. Agent drops down the boulder, trying to escape, but Curve, he's found himself the kill here. Kana, full-on retreat mode. Oh, Sarpei goes back in. Tongu gets the kill, but so does Kha'Zix as well. Red buff being skirmished over here. It's the overhand smash down onto Kana. Kha'Zix is going to have to turn tail and get out of this one. Gore, I couldn't even tell you how many kills went back and forth there, but the Herberts still maybe pulled just a little bit ahead. Actually, a small dip in favor of the triangles.
Yeah, I think the triangles are finding fights that are just more impactful right now. Again, it's unfortunate because they don't have the follow-up potential. I mean, that's a Gold Fury that honestly could have been taken away. Tongu had no mana. Kana had to force and fall back. I feel like they could have turned their eyes towards it, but it just lasted a little too long with the respawn timers for them to feel comfortable. But it's those kind of engagements that are going to bring you back into this. You're 700 gold, 600 gold behind. You don't have too much to stress about just yet. And so because of that, you're going to be able to make these little plays and start pulling this game right back towards you and your team. But it's finding anything afterward, right? Getting kills is nice. You haven't got a tower, you haven't got a Fury, you haven't got a Pyromancer. That's what I'm looking at for the triangles. We know they can do it because they did it last game. So it is just a matter of time, I think, for them. But the Herberts have a good composition. If you don't shut down Chronos early on, it's going to be difficult. He still has a 2-level lead there over Curve. He hasn't hit the point where I think he is impacting the fights at an immense level yet, though. So Coast still has, I mean, maybe 7 minutes, realistically, before we start seeing him absolutely swing for the fences.
Gore, how much of, maybe some of the recent fights going, even just one kill in the way of the triangles is a result of just that? Not necessarily a River's Rebuke that misses, but obviously Hercules has this massive early game damage, the stun, the knock up the boulder. I mean, it'll melt down these backliners, these squishy targets. But are you at all concerned about what Mazega brings to the table in a team fight that Hercules might not necessarily be able to match up with?
That's the healing that I think comes to my mind immediately, right? Mazega's just going to be able to make sure everyone's topped off in a lot of these engagements. If something goes wrong, you're going to see this where he autos his teammates there to make sure that he gets a little bit of healing over time. The 2 obviously throws out a big heal, but also that big shield on top of that. That's the part that I think is going to be very difficult to overcome. And I really do think the Mazega, as a support, in terms of what a support is going to do, is falling into exactly that category, whereas Agent is the setup portion, right? One keeps you alive over here for the triangles, one is trying to help you find kills there for the Herberts. But I like to compare Agent, this is going to be an interesting one, we'll have to see if I drop it before the fight breaks out, but kind of to a Thanatos, where early on you're going to be great, but you have to be careful how you manage that into the late and mid game.
Yeah, Agent needs to be careful here. Actually grabs a ultimate. It's the Fields of Loves from Curve that tried to lock down Agent there. So an ultimate cooldown in exchange for Hercules that now has to go back to base. Aturi feeling confident. Despite 2-0-1 on the Merlin on the opposite side, Aturi on this Agni has done a good job of staying relevant here up to this mid-game point. 1-1 and 3 so far out of that mid lane, 2-0-1. So, I mean, as far as relative impact goes, Score, this Agni for his team has found a little bit more than what Tongyu has been able to do for the Herberts.
Yeah, I think that's the strength of Agni, but maybe it's not even a slow pace for a Merlin. I think it's just the fact that, unfortunately, Tongyu Well, I mean, look what he's surrounded by. Other people who are probably going to secure a little bit more overall than what he's going to be able to do. Sarpei's going to find kills, Agent's going to find kills before he can get there. So I think he's going to have, well, maybe a little bit of work cut out for him, but he's got that Divine Ruin, he's got his Cronus Pendant, he's going to be good, and Merlin's always good. So I expect to see Tongyu heavily impacting fights silently. In fact, I think one of the last fights the Herberts were really able to pull back, a lot of it was Tongyu, and if he had had more mana, I think they would have been able to find even more kills on top of what they had. He just ran out a little too fast, and so wasn't able to turn things back around in his favor.
That's one of the shortcomings maybe of Merlin in the early game. Get a little bit mana hungry depending on how much you've had to use to clear these waves. Gold Fury being looked at here by the Herberts. This will be a real, I guess, temperature check for Vaporish Coast. Has Hecate, has Typhon's Fang. We figured that's when this Chronos would really start to swing in some of these fights. Is going to get the stun down, but has to use his ultimate. Fields of Love by Curve, largely mitigated. Sarpei has dropped down the ultimate there. River's Rebuke up and over. Agent deep in the backline. Pull back in by Tongyu for some good damage there. Damage down from Kha'Zix as well. We'll start to peel out some of this backline. Triangle's playing defensively here at the moment. Back in goes Kha'Zix. Where does he slam down? It's right on the Merlin in the mid lane, but the stun is there to lock him down. Wukong off to the side. Double stun from Agent as well. Dazzling offensive from Kana. Not enough to lock down the kill. Kha'Zix escapes with his life. Agent does the same as well. No kills somehow locked down here. The dash back in from this Amaterasu, Vaporous Coast, looking for a follow-up stun. Instead, Sarpei completely disengages from the fight and will lock down a Tier 1 tower in the mid.
But I might have overestimated the length of time that it would have taken for Chronos. Now that this Typhon's Fang's online, you saw hitting for, you know, base 200 in a lot of these engagements. It's starting to chunk a ton from Coast, and now they can pressure out a Gold Fury.
And they will lock it down as well. Fire Form not often seen in the engagements out of the Merlin, but still plenty good at locking down immobile targets, and Gold Fury, when properly aggroed, is definitely one of those. So Tongyu helping the team lock down the Gold Fury. Their largest gold lead maybe we've seen here so far in this game, 2,500 gold in the advantage of the Herberts. And much like what we saw in Game 1, Gore, for the Triangles, it's this late game scaling I think you have to be worried about. Beads used in response to the Fields of Love. Agent finds himself alone, though, with 3 members of the Triangles looking at him. Kana's found a kill elsewhere on the map, but Curve has found one right here in the long lane. Kha'Zix still staying aggressive. Kana half HP. Where we stand, though, 1-for-1 trade. Agent, Delta, both down.
You know, Coast, I love that he canceled his back to see if he could save Agent, if there was anything he could do to try and stop 3 people.
Yeah, flip the
He had
script.
no mana. It's like, it was that idea of like, man, this is a really good call, but you have literally nothing that you're going to be able to throw out. So unfortunately there, I think Agent just ends up biting off more than he can chew, or maybe it shows cases where the Triangles are trying to put some of their pressure. A lot of this is going to come back down to what we were talking about in Game 1, which is map control. Herberts had a lot of good early map control, but when it came down to Fire Giant fights, that's where things started to slip out of their fingers. The Triangles didn't even win the Fire Giant fights. They would lose the Fire Giant and then just demolish you while you had the buff like it was nothing. A lot of that was Mercury. I think Hebo can bring some of the same potential, but maybe not the exact same, hey, I'm going to kill 3 of you, you know, 1, 2, 3, but you're all 10 miles apart anyway, and I don't care because of Mercury. Hebo needs you to be clustered up a little bit more to find that level of potential. And so I'm looking towards Delta as making a huge splash, but, you know, the question is how big the splash will still be.
Well, Mazega is splashing Sarpei with a few Riptides on the way back. We wondered which way this Nemesis would go build-wise. Looks a little bit more attack speed-based. Golden Blade, Toxic Blade, Deathbringer into a little bit of crit to round things out. Maybe a Rage to finalize the build there, or the Malice, rather, excuse me, right after the Toxic Blade there. And then when you look at what the Triangles have, you know, they only have the 1 shell. There is the Shoguns for Kana, so, you know, maybe the attack speed-based build here on this Nemesis makes a little more sense.
Yeah, and honestly, I think the curve that's coming in for Sarpei as well, a little bit, like, the power that they have is going to make sure the crits are impactful. The Katana, at least at the very beginning, is going to give you a little bit of that extra movement speed to try and chase people down. But we still haven't seen a whole lot. I mean, 2, 2, and 4 kind of feels slow pace overall from what I expected out of Sarpei. Yeah. I think a lot of those early kills were solid, and I think this Nemesis has definitely had their place. But they haven't been the biggest name throughout all of this. It was, what, the last fight they just split push tier 1 in mid, which is a big win, but it's not that impressive of a feat. I think now that the Malice is online, along with the Toxic Blade, I'm expecting Sarpei to be a little bit bigger, specifically in dealing with like Itori and Curve, who are the ones that are starting to come away with these fights.
Yeah, the headline doesn't read Sarpei left the fight to take down Tier 1 tower in mid. It reads he's helped his team lock down Delta over by the purple buff. So now Delta continues his struggles here in this game. 20 minutes in, 1-4-4. Almost more deaths than the rest of the triangles combined, so the Hebo has not hit his stride just yet. 5v3 rather, for the Herberts here. On this left side of the map is Itori is going to have to go back to base, finds the knockback over onto Curve, both actives used from the Cupid, but there's the double stun from Agent as well. Mazega River's Rebuke slows things down here. Riptide disengages the Yamoja Tier 2 tower, not able to be damaged yet. This is a Tier 1 tower still available. Kha'Zix has found a stun over onto Coast. Shell, or Beads rather, used. Tongu finishes off the kill there. Sweeping fight, sweeping advantages here for the Herbert score, and it might just get worse.
I love the way the boulder was able to bounce down, but now, unfortunately, Itori, I think Agent here, or Mazega, sorry, in return, are going to figure out why the Herberts are going to be able to swing hard. Now that Demonic Grip is finished for Coast, he is just swinging, and so it's difficult to stand in the face of this Kronos. Even with no mana on him, he's just going to be able to deal so much to objectives and to gods alike that you can't stop him.
Yeah, this is the kind of the game-breaking fight I think that we've now seen in this one. It's a 7K gold differential for the Herberts as they have really started to distance themselves. 9K in the experience department. In Gore, I mean, it's kind of been the writing on the wall here. I'm not sure the Triangles have the same level of scaling to kind of keep up with the Herberts are bringing. Finally, in the previous fight, Coast is able to lock down a kill. 106 now on this Kronos. Could just get worse now. And Oni Fury started up, likely finished off. Delta over on the enemy team's blue buff. It's going to go down for free, and the Herberts extend their lead.
I think something that the Herberts are going to have here, granted they had the lead last time, so I'm hesitant to give them this credit. But typically when you get this much of a lead, you get that Phoenix over there, it's difficult to lose from it, right? That being said, the Triangle showcased, hey, 3 good fights is all it takes. 1 to turn it around, 2 to establish your lead, and then 3 to win the game, right? Once you hit that late game, yeah, 3 5-man sweeps are easily going to give you the lead. So I think the Triangles have showcased that potential as just making it work here. But for the Herberts, I think the best way to describe the rest of the game is to quote the NRG skin that Coast is using, which is very simply, I'm a race car. They're just going to go way too fast towards this end. It's going to be difficult to stop them down.
Well, this is where the Triangles need to come up big. Fire Giant peeled off of, and actually Vaporish Coast has to use his ultimate early. Big team fight ultimate in the River's Rebuke is now down, though, as Mazega tried to separate the fight. Sarpei is cleaned up at Tori despite an onslaught of damage being turned around. Vaporish Coast thinks he's got a kill on the Kha'Zix, but not the case. 2 members left of the Triangles here. Agent is going to blink himself forward, so it's only a matter of time before Delta and Mazega go down. Kha'Zix and Curve have both relegated themselves to farming up the rest of this jungle. Can you turn around one, though? Maybe I've finished off this fight too early. Delta's found the water hands over onto Sarpei, and actually a double kill. What a turnaround. When I think it's all said and done, it's much the opposite. Gore, this is what we saw in Game 1. Curve is pushing down this long lane here, but this time Agent is there to answer back with the Phoenix defense.
This definitely feels, and this is going to be, I think, a good comparison for Triangles. It's very Sanguine-esque. Hey, we're going to take this fight over here, hope someone can do something that stabilizes it, and that's Delta getting a double kill. Yeah, we lose 3 for 2, but hey, our carry was on the other side of the map pushing down your towers. Whether or not they get the Phoenix maybe makes a bigger difference here. Fire Minions versus Fire Minions, as opposed to now Fire Minions still only on the side of the Herberts. Unfortunately, they just didn't get enough to stop the Herberts from doing everything.
Vaporish Coast and Kana attempting to 2-man. They would have 2-manned it. Let's make that clear. That would have been a free Fire Giant if Kha'Zix hadn't poked his head there around the corner. Now 1 ward for the Triangles in range there, so no more funny business from the Herberts around this FG. Is a Phoenix down in the long lane, though. So the Triangles, you know, all things considered, have to be careful with how much of this map they're giving away, or how long maybe they spend away from this long lane. Because if now we know, and now the Herberts know, that they can send an Ama and a Kronos on this Fire Giant, you know, nothing's going to stop them, and it certainly won't now.
especially now Telkine's ring online as well. You know, Coast, if anything, has only attack speed, is going to hit really hard and fast, but you got to be careful.
That's close. Kha'Zix rather nearly steals that one away. Mazega, River's Rebuke, not enough to save his life. Here comes the chase, though. 4 members of the Triangles left alive. Tier 2 tower, only thing separating the Herberts from this right side Phoenix. Beads, Aegis, both used. Dazzling offensive down as well. Porsche Coast finishes off the kill. Down onto Curve. Tongyu is in range to do some good damage here. Kha'Zix also in range to escape from the fight as Wukong is able to do so successfully. Right side Phoenix left standing. The Triangles, 3 members left alive for the next 20 seconds. Left side Phoenix being looked at by Fire Minion Score. This could be the push that ends the game.
Delta's doing anything and everything in his power. Unfortunately, it's not enough to stop the left Phoenix from going down. I'm kind of surprised to see the Herberts not pressure out mid, but it looks like they want to get some last-minute buys, whatever they're going to finish off, selling off their blessings, get those last couple of items online. It should make the difference, so that's a full Pythags piece picked up from Vaporish Coast. So now, just to highlight this, with the Typhon's Fang, the boots, as well as the Hecate, as well as that Pythags piece, all of those are giving him bonus power from their lifesteal, and that is what it makes it so insane. That's part of why this Typhon's Fang is so big. Magical power is increased by twice the amount of lifesteal, so you're getting 30 extra power here off of Typhon's Fang, making it essentially like 100 power, right? And now you're applying that to your boots, you're applying that to the Pythags piece, and of course Hecate has that sprinkling of lifesteal on it as well.
Oh my God.
So it's literally just free real estate in terms of damage. He's going to demolish you if you stand in front of him.
And you've got 2 Divine Ruins to apply a good bit of anti-heal there on the opposite side. Not a lot of auto-attack defense outside of a Nemean and upgraded Shell. It's an uphill battle, to be sure, for the Triangles here, and it's the mid lane Phoenix that'll be playing 6-man in on the fight. River's Rebuke from Mazega, as always, starting off the defensive stand on this fight. Herberts making their way in. Kha'Zix deep on the front line, but you got Tongyu, Vaporish Coast turning around the damage. Sarpei's in the back line, doing plenty of damage himself as well. Down goes the Cupid, into the fountain goes Sarpei, feeling a little bit too aggressive. Maybe this time around, 3-man stun. Triangles on the back foot. Titan goes down, and we are headed to a game number 3.
All right, so that's twice now that one team in a European meta has drafted a late game comp and won with the late game comp. I think having Coast, again, 4-0-7, especially with the way Agent played the early game, got that duo lane ahead. Sarpei was able to do a lot. 6-4 maybe doesn't look that great, but then when you talk about how impactful those kills were, then it maybe looks a little bit better. And you get Merlin. I mean, like, just everything you had across the board in terms of draft was phenomenal. So I think the Triangles are going to need to clean that up and, you know, maybe try to finish the game a little faster if you're going to let something like that through, because otherwise you might end up in the same spot.
Yeah, I think the difference, though, from game 1 is that, you know, the Triangles weren't ahead with maybe a slightly more early game team, but I don't even know if you can really consider it that, especially with what we saw Agent doing over in this long lane. I mean, all of that lead built on the back of Hercules, I think, through the first couple of moments there throughout that game. Goremizer, I cannot wait to see what these two teams draft for game number 3. Late game, early game, early game. I'm not sure. Game number 3 right on the other side of this break. And right back into picks and bans for game number 3 we go. And we've seen the clear-cut strategy, Gore, from both of these teams throughout this set so far. It's the late-game drafts, especially in kind of the play style that the EU SOC has, and maybe SEC and even some of the SPL guys as well, is you can weather that storm early, slow things down, get to that late game, you tend to win the game. And that's at least what we've seen here so far in the finals of the EU SOC. How do the picks and bans maybe change, though? We've seen some kind of on-the-fly adaptation, Cthulhu taken away, Nemesis brought back in based on those bans. I like the respect ban, though. Agent on the Hercules, way too much in game 2. Triangles are going to ban him out here.
That's, I think, the biggest transition you could have made. One of the biggest strengths you had in game 1 was this Morrigan, and one of the biggest weaknesses you had in game 2 was that Hercules. So you want those to make it through, and I think Herbert's kind of paying more attention. The Bakasura, I think he's potent. He is strong right now, and maybe it's something that the Triangles love running, but using that as a ban over some of these others maybe ends up hurting them a little bit more here for the Herberts. Or maybe it's this call. Hey, we're going to give you Morrigan or Cthulhu, whichever one they hadn't banned out. But now we're going to be able to get the other one. We're at least going to be able to match pace. The problem is that Cthulhu was unkillable earlier. I just don't think he did a whole lot else besides that.
Yeah, I think Kana has had himself a day and a half out of this solo lane. And from game 1, despite a loss, Cthulhu looked very comfortable for him there in the solo lane. So pending, maybe it's a weirdness. I guess could still be a support Cthulhu, though we haven't seen that quite as much recently. I mean, really, it's the Triangle saying we value, the Morrigan and Hercules more than, taking away this Cthulhu from them. So a lot of respect, I think, paid to Agent there, as I've said previously. Hebo Ganesh, mixed results from those earlier on, or at least early on in game 1 before turning things around. So a bit of a run back here for the Triangles. Do you like what they've drafted through their first 3?
So far, I do, although I'm still hesitant on Hebo, but I think he does a lot of good against a Nemesis. And we saw what Triangles were able to do with the late game. I think Morrigan helps transition into that as well, especially, hey, you're up against this Kronos again, but now you can turn into a Kronos, so you have that available option. I just want to know what they're going to do as a carry. Triangles went Cupid last time, good early game. Didn't necessarily live up to that because of the Hercules, but doesn't have maybe the same power late game as like a Kronos or some of the other hunters. So I wouldn't mind seeing something that's maybe just more of a hard carry for him.
Lots of supports being banned out here. I have to see what the Herberts round out their draft with. Set, I remember being banned away before game 2, wondering maybe where that comes from. Locked in here for the Triangle, so certainly an interesting pick there. To be sure. What do you think of the Set? Where do you think he maybe falls here?
That's the question of the hour, right? I mean, Paul just ran it in mid, so maybe he's over in mid. Maybe he's in the jungle and you have Hebo or Morrigan over in the solo. I think Morrigan can flex over there, but trying to put any of these guys up against a Cthulhu in lane just seems like a bad feels overall for Triangle. So that's going to be interesting to handle it.
Yeah, wow.
I literally can't think of who you would want on that team to match up against a Cthulhu.
I mean, it's not so much, okay, so it is solo lane. I feel like I've seen solo lane Set like once or twice in some of my games. It's when that Soul Eater starts to build up, he becomes very, very difficult to kill. But that's a big kind of, I think, time frame, Gore. To your credit, you've got to deal with a Cthulhu who has this giant ring of damage at level 1, presuming that's what Kana has gone for here. So you got to get yourself to that Soul Eater. An interesting matchup, to be sure.
Yeah, this is going to be
That's gone for his 1.
Tough, I think, at the beginning. And clear-wise, I don't know. Kha'Zix is going to have to... There's a lot of proving ground here. I think Paul just did it in mid, though, for the Knights in the Pro League. And if Paul can do it in the Pro League, at least in mid, I think I can give it over to Solo Lane. If you're feeling confident in yourself, I think you can at least make it work. It is going to be questionable, so we'll have to see how some of the ganks on that lane go early on. But it's the dual lane that I'm interested in as well. Curve didn't necessarily get off to do much of what they wanted to last time, and now Agent isn't able to be as aggressive. Erlong can still be aggressive, but Hercules just has a different tenacity to him than some of the other warriors.
It was Hercules early on in game 2 that got things started. Now it's the early on Shen for Agent that has found the pin. I was very proud of that one. Thank you very much.
That's a good one. I actually really like that. The early on shin.
He's found the pin onto Curve and an early level lead. Again, I think this is kind of what we've talked about with this Ganesh, especially this right here. It's the lockdown potential and the no escape potential from Mazega right off the bat. Vaporish Coast dropping down the laugh just a little bit. Agent and Coast strike yet again, minute and a half in.
Now, this is something we've seen, I think, more and more in all tiers of play, but I've gotten to feel it, and maybe you have. I don't know how much support you've been forced into lately, Dave, but playing Guardians just doesn't feel as solid as playing Warriors early on. It's because you can do this. Look at this rotation. Look at the knockup. That's everything that Agent just brought into the equation for both of these fights has been huge for them.
Agent is absolutely taking this set over, hopefully not giving over a kill to the triangles. Gore, this is not something we see all that often, which is the support rotation over to the mid lane at like level 2 or 3, but I guess if Agent already says, all right, well, Coast is going to be just fine, might as well try to go help out in the mid lane. Knocks down Delta once more. Tough game on the Hebo in game 2. Starts off game 3 much the same. You know, Herberts have a very similar composition. Trade out the Amma for a Cthulhu, a Hercules for an Erlong Shen, and the start almost the exact same as well.
I will admit, I think well, I don't know that it's going to be a permanent swap. I don't think that the 3v3 has started and is staying for a little bit. I think Agent's going to hang out over here in the duo a little bit longer, and you can see that's working out. And it's just because I think Coast can handle himself. We saw that last game. I don't think Coast is going to be able to handle himself until he gets at least a couple items online, though. Then you can start seeing him maybe not even box out Curve, but just stay alive through Curve. But this ROM is going to have a different pace than the Cupid. It's going to be a lot easier for him to hit shots that are going to, hurt you just as much as you hurt him as a Kronos, as opposed to looking for more, ability-based damage, trying to lock you down in that way. He's just going to try to shoot you more or shoot you harder. Right. And so I think Coast is going to have a different path throughout the game. Curve maybe putting a target on his back because of that. It's going to be difficult to make it, I want to say, consistent for them. A lot of what we've seen out of the Triangles when they did win was their ability to turn fights around in their favor, and I just don't know, unless Curve has a really solid game, that it's going to start happening here.
Well, we saw this kind of ROM versus Magical ADC matchup in Game 1, and we'll be able to recount that here in just a second after we see if Sarpei is able to finish off the kill onto Mazega. Unable to do so. Use the second dash to get out alive. Did use the ultimate in the meantime. But if you think back to Game 1, Gore, roles were flipped. It was Vaporish Coast on the ROM, Curve on the Ola run. And Coast was kind of handling the Ola run there for a while. It's a different matchup, granted. Again, Kronos instead of the Ola run. But we've already seen a ROM that kind of just ran wild, 2v1'd, and also the players are different. I think that has to be taken into account as well.
Yeah.
But I think your point carries some weight here. I think, it's going to be difficult, at least early, for Vaporish Coast to kind of feel comfortable. Maybe not to be, though. Curve pushed back beneath his Tier 1 tower. Now, though, Gora, if we kind of move away from the long lane, I kind of want to focus on this jungle and kind of the differences we've seen. Sarpei on this Nemesis has kind of exerted pressure everywhere. And I think Delta not necessarily has shied away, but hasn't been able to find that same impact now in a couple of games on the SIBA.
Yeah, I'm actually curious because Kha'Zix, I think of Matarasu, maybe she got banned in the second phase and I just didn't realize it, but being able to go for something that's very potent and as good as she is in the solo lane was something that helped them a lot in Game 1. Delta being on a late game hyper carry, granted, I guess he's technically still on one, but both of them being glass cannons, I think, in Mercury and Hebo, it gets to the point where Hebo is not as safe. I mean, your best disengage if you get caught out is your ult half the time, and you don't want to be using that unless you're going to get damage on it. So Delta is in an awkward spot to make things work where it's just going to be more difficult. It's almost as though he drafted himself something to be a little more difficult to fully, I guess, showcase in the way that the Mercury did come through. And the Herberts, other than that, like misstep, I guess, a couple of misplays in Game 1, they've had map control, they've had teamfight control, they've been very solid all around. It was the fact that you had, realistically, this Mercury that just changed the pace of everything in Game 1 that had some good surroundings on him as well, but now you don't have that same potential I see in the triangle.
Right.
So I think the Herberts, it's more likely for them to be able to turn this entire set around here than it was in the first game.
Now, Gore, I'm willing to admit my expectations different from what we're seeing there out of the solo lane. Curve, though, being ganked now. Realizing maybe his life is not much longer, is going to use the ultimate to farm down, and Vaporish Coast is going to pick up his second kill of the game. And once again, it's Sarpe finding a gank that works somewhere on this map for his team. A couple of assists, 3 kills total for the Herberts, so just missing out on that one. But this Nemesis and this Kronos have now combined for 2 out of 3 kills so far here in this game. Just gets worse for Curve. I talked about how it's a, we saw an okay matchup in game 1. But you got to keep yourself at a point where you can take advantage, I suppose, of that matchup. But just prior to that, Gore, I got to admit, my expectations were that Cthulhu was going to kind of deal with this set just fine in this lane. We've actually seen Kha'Zix, kind of the saving grace for the triangles here, exerting some decent pressure over in the short lane, rather.
Well, he's got that early assassin damage, which is going to help, and I think that's going to cause a lot of trouble. Much like Curve is just going to get eviscerated there. There's not much you can do against that. Even use the beads to try and stay alive. And I think it comes down to the fact that I think Curve on this ROM, we saw him do well, but that was Coast piloting it. I think Coast is just having a really good set. And again, maybe caught out a couple of times in the late game 1, but other than that, it's been very, very good for the Herberts duo lane. And now you give him the lockdown from what is a warrior. Late game, you transition, you get Kana back into that same, 5-0-5 Cthulhu stance where he was just dominating everybody. Early on, yeah, Kha'Zix as an assassin can maybe help shut that down, but once you start getting some of those bruiser items online, I think the Herberts, again, their front line is just going to be a little bit better.
Right, it's the same start that we saw from game number 2. Agent still controlling this map alongside his jungler. This time, though, he's going to get taken down. Kha'Zix finally has found a kill. Tongyu will pull back a couple, but not able to do enough damage to really make a difference on the back end of this fight. I suppose you fly too close to the sun, and Agent's wax wings have maybe melted off this time around.
It's just difficult. I'm trying to think of the good comeback area here for Herberts. And a lot of it's going to be built around Dharmic Pillars, as well as Curve having a really, really good set of rotation. Atori as well, maybe making the right transition. But there's not a lot of people. I mean, maybe at this point is where you do become the Cthulhu, or you become a Ganesh, or you become an Erlang Shin, because those are the only ones I think that are going to be able to help flow with a team fight. I don't know if having 2 sets is going to make that big difference for you. So Atori maybe having even more difficulty this time choosing his targets. Because you won't get a lot of kills, you'll just get a lot of control in those team fights if you turn into either the supports or the solo laners.
Right, and that's sort of where the triangles turned around game 1, was when finally this Morgan started to impact some of these fights, the scaling. We've kind of rehashed those tales a decent amount. So Tori definitely carrying a lot of weight here. Loves this Doom Morb build. Morgan now twice in a row, game 1, or not twice in a row, I guess, but game 1 and game 3, both a Doom Morb start. And then Doom Morb in our previous game as well on the Agni. Usually lends itself to some of these earlier game rotations. A little extra speed gets you involved a little bit earlier on, but got to admit, Gore, haven't maybe quite seen that to the level I would have expected.
Yeah, I'm at a loss really for the pace of the triangles. Because
it's hard to lock down. I agree.
Yeah, it's hard to figure out where you want to fight with this composition, right? I think everything they have, and what the Herberts are trying to do as well, it's difficult to figure out how you're going to take fights other than do this. Hey, we're just going to bring it to you, see what you can do. You lock down Curve, it's going to go well for you. But I don't know where the triangles fight back. I don't know where we see anything big from them. I don't know where on the Herberts where Sarpe is making a big role, because so far we've seen a couple of ganks that's it, right? It's just weird to trace down the pace of the game here.
I yell solo lane funnily because, it's the one lane with a 1 level lead as Kha'Zix has continued to pull ahead of Kana just a little bit. But then that conversation kind of reverts back into it's so hard to kill a Cthulhu anyway, even if he's just 1 level behind. So I agree. Difficult to find the route back in here for the triangles. Delta looking for it maybe over on the Sarpe. Water Hands connects from near full range.
That's an okay ult.
Delta's going to use the ultimate to chunk down the damage onto Agent as well. 9 turns Blessing, I don't think quite found what Agent was looking for. Now Kha'Zix has found the second kill of the game. The solo lane rotations continue to pay off for the Triangles, and they're better off for it. That's, you know, the one lifeline I think they've got here, and they're going to continue to play around it. Kha'Zix's now making a move back in towards Tongu, and Tori will finish off the kill here. Also brought to you by Set. Now 3 out of 3 kills participated in by the solo laner.
And I think I can't think of a better way to word it than right now your jungler or your solo laner is being the jungler in the team fights you need Delta to be. Delta is not having that impact. This Hebo just isn't hitting the same way the Set is.
Yeah, you know, Kana hasn't quite had the massive kill impact, but he can still do this, set up the kill onto Delta, and Sarpei will be there to fully knock him down. Now, though, this is where you have to be worried. Leaving Coast alone with Curve, I mean, it's been the last taunt spam, effectively, from kill number 1. Atori's going to have to rotate over just to help lock down this purple buff. First tower in the game goes down, Gore, and, you know, Vapor's Coast has kind of hit that point where he's unboxable. And, you know, it's a little bit earlier than maybe we expected. Typhon's Fang was his elected second item bot after the boots, of course, in game number 2. Looks to be the same here in game 3. And the Herberts not slowed down by a couple of picks here, looking towards a Pyro.
Yeah, the 2-level lead, the farm that's going the way of Coast, even though, you know, player damage, not necessarily the highest right now for the Chronos. I think it is, yes, the net worth, where he's up at the very top, is probably the bigger difference that you're going to have. The fact that he's farming so efficiently right now and just trying to scan through where exactly we see this ROM. It's much, much further down, almost 2,000 that's going to be separating, about 1,500, let's be realistic. So, yeah, you're still in it if you're Curve. You still have, you know, the ability to get these items, but Coast, he's going to be hitting that late-game potential faster.
Well, I like the thought there, ult right back to Curve when he wasn't waiting, but unfortunately Delta was hanging behind just as well. Snipes down, Delta finishes off the kill onto Coast, but has left himself vulnerable. Nice knock up there. Is actually going to slow this one down. Rotation over from Tongu, and that's a free kill over to the Merlin as well. 1-for-1 trade. You have gotten rid of Coast, so getting that Chronos off the map for the time being, Gore, maybe a small win for the Triangles.
Yeah, it was more aggressive from Coast than anything, but now the Dharmic Pillars are setting up Agent as well. It's going to strip his protections, make this easier to get a kill.
Look at this. Atori has transformed into the Nemesis. Better off for it. 1 down for the Herberts here. Kana rotates over from the solo lane. Tongu has finished off the kill finally onto Curve. 1 or 2 final shots is all Kana needs, and now this Cthulhu starting to swing. Killing spree over from the Set. The fire damage not nearly enough. Mazega quite low. 1 more shot's all that's there, but he has to turn around. Oh, the pullback, and Tongu gets it. But so does Kha'Zix as well. 3 for 3 across the board.
It's extended, though, technically, that you get that 4 for 3 because Coast going down earlier on, so maybe that makes that big difference. And again, it just kind of felt
these two teams,
greedy from Coast. I'm really wondering, like, just going back and replaying it in my head, I don't know what Coast's goal was over there. Like, I'm going to sit around the corner, I ult in place, I die to Hebo. I don't know where any of that goes right for him. So we'll have to figure out what's going through. It really is the Gru meme. He just has to look at that last panel and really recognize what's going wrong here for him. Either way, though, he's still, again, vastly ahead. Now has the Typhon's Fang. Once that's online, I feel like we're going to start seeing, again, the power creep come through for him, where taking a boxing level with Curve is not going to be difficult. Being impactful in team fights, it's going to be easy for him. He's not going to be the late-game powerhouse just yet. Still wants to get a couple more items online to be swinging as hard as he was last game. But he's hit that point now where duo lane hope, I don't know if you can rely on this ROM yet.
Gore, quick and maybe not so easy question. What is the carry potential, do you think, of a Set that at 4-0-1 building kind of this hybrid bruisery type build? Because that's where 4 out of the 7 kills for the Triangles lay right now.
Man, I think he's doing the jungle portion in team fights better than what you're seeing out of Delta. It's just, can he keep it consistent when Kana's there, when Sarpei's there?
Right.
I think for Tongu and Coast, he can sit on them, but it's going to be difficult.
Coast stays alive. Can't say the same for Curve, though, as Agent has gotten the kill there. Kana rotates through, has the ultimate, a little extra range there. Delta knocked up, knocked down. See you later to the jungler. Kana still on the chase here. Mazega being looked at. A couple members from the Triangles back in behind the Herberts here, though. So this fight might not all be over, though, as Kha'Zix has re-engaged on this fight. Tongyu has to flicker his way away. Set taken down somewhat low. Atori finds the nice double stun here. Is going to transform into the Nemesis once more. Turns around to kill onto Sarpei. And now it's just Atori left alive. The 4-for-1 trade, and the Herberts pull the lead a little bit further.
If they had a little more mana, I honestly think Kana could tank up that Fury, and then they could be able to secure it no problem. Although being a Primal, maybe it's just not worth full committing everything that you have onto it. Go ahead and back and see what you can do, but it is still going to be helpful to pick up. It'll make that Primal, or not that Primal, that Pyro, or that Fire Giant a little bit easier to try and burn down. Or yeah, you can just do the Cyclone Spin. Unfortunately, I think it's a little easier to do the Primal, but still, taking an objective by yourself, I guess just decides it's not worth his time. Oh no, the Rom Snipe.
Oh, yeah, you spot out the snipes from the Rom, so I think smartly backed off there. Dharmic Pillar's going to be used here. Primal Fury reset for the time being. Dash right back through from Kana. And Tongyu rotates through, finds some good damage onto Mezega as well. Trapped into the corner. Surprised nobody actually moved forward to finish off the Ganesh there. But is TKO nonetheless, and maybe that opens the door here for the Primal Fury as Kha'Zix starts to rotate his way over.
This is where you have to go big. If you want Kha'Zix to showcase that carry potential, I mean, 4-1 and 2 has only gotten a death since the last time we looked over there. This is the time for this set to go big.
He's going to back himself off, so he has the ability to go big. Herbert's very patient around this Primal Fury. Surprised, actually, that they haven't completely finished it off. Tongyu is somewhat low. Maybe that's the big differentiator here. Their Merlin not really able to kind of be in the fray without surviving or without having to survive, maybe, a deep backline dive. Do you get the vibe, though, Gore, of this this Primal Fury fight not being the last hope, but being really where this game could bust wide open?
Yeah, if the Triangles are able to get this, then it makes it a little easier to go in and either A, steal a Fire Giant, or B, set themselves up for it. But if it goes to the Herberts, it might be more or less like a final nail in the coffin, where they're ahead, now they're further ahead, and they can do another objective much easier. So you have to be very cautious, I think, as the Triangles to come through. And I'm wondering if they want to make a play. You know, Coast being here is going to be solid for them in terms of damage. That might just be all they need.
Man, Mezega just keeps getting looked at, or walked at, rather, by the Herberts, and now the Ganesh does go down. Nice double knockup from Delta. Big-time fight now out of the jungle for the Triangles. Blink forward. One more water hand. Just a little bit of damage is all you need for Sarpei, and he is going to find it. A double kill for the Kibo now. 2-for-1 trade so far. The Triangles actually slightly ahead, largely because Kana has just walked at the backline here. Curve, Atori being looked at. Delta still alive. Gets his third kill of the fight now. Agent left turning and running. 2 members of each team left alive. Scrappy, Gore, and this is not surprising given what we've seen from both of these teams. These long, drawn-out fights. They get separated. Front line in one place, back line in the other. Both teams have 2 left standing at the end of the day.
All right, so I want to draw a comparison to Game 1, which was you have an Amaterasu and a Mercury, which either one of them on the Triangles are able to then go set up. Your Amaterasu is going to live. Your Mercury is going to run people down, one-tap them very easily. Doesn't have to worry about the chase potential because you know you're going to catch up to them. Again, you're the fastest god alive, so you're perfectly fine with that. And when you have things like the Erendite playing into it, it makes it much easier. Now, in that scenario, when Kana goes into your backline, he's still, got to the point where he's 5-0-5, but as you transition into the late game, it got a lot easier to stop Kana from dominating as much, because he can't just chase you down if his entire team gets erased. Now, it's taking you longer to get those kills online if you're the Triangles, and Kana doesn't have to turn around because he still has some form of support for a lot of it. Anyway, it is, whether it's form of distraction that you're not looking at him, or if they're turning kills right back around onto you, he's now chasing people down to be 4-0-3. I think this Cthulhu is making a huge play, and they don't have an answer for it on the Triangles.
The Herberts commit the frenzy to finally getting rid of the Fury, but that's a big team fighting utility that's now gone. Mezega once more deep on the front line, hasn't been taken down early on in this fight just yet, but now Kana has literally gone big and is going to do some good damage to Mezega, and Ganesh does finally end up going down first overall in this fight. Kha'Zix is going to try to find some damage, but the stun is there from Vaporish Ghost, and the kill is as well. It's a double out of the Chronos, and the Herberts win the Fury in a big fight on the end.
And it's just the team play. I mean, in most games, Kana should not have lived there. I mean, Kha'Zix was literally on top of him when he was a couple of hits away, but you can see, again, that itemization that's going in his favor to make him a little more tanky, as well as the fact that Kha'Zix just doesn't, like, even building tanky, you're still an assassin at base. So yeah, you're going to live a little bit longer than we're going to be used to seeing a set living, but you're not going to be able to withstand the 4-5 man looking at you that, again, some warrior could potentially bring here. Now you're in a position where you have to be careful about the Fire Giant.
And the Herberts are able to successfully finish that one off. 2 members of the Triangles in range, Water Carpet and a Blink. This is going to help Delta stay alive, but there's a knock-up on a Tori on the back end of it. Kana gets the kill. 5 members strong with the Fire Giant buff. A Tori dead for the next 50 seconds. Great chance here, Gore, for the Herberts to knock down a lot of these towers. 3 tier 2s still are available for finishing off. 1 tier 1 tower over in the short lane. It's going to be a big gold swing.
Yeah, at this point you have to be defensive more than anything for the Triangles. I think you can get a little aggressive, but you don't have the same split push potential, especially with the 3-level deficit there for Curve, still trying to get that first crit item online on the ROM. Fire Giant means they're going to be able to break base a lot easier than you. Cthulhu can very easily handle those minions on his own on left if he really wants, and so Herberts have the pretty much full advantage here.
Yeah.
Like you said, a lot of gold they can swing on the map. But I think there's not only good potential for gold to swing on the map. I feel like if they get a team fight in the right spot here for the Triangles, it could all end in just a blink of an eye because the way the fights have been going.
You know why the Herberts are going to lose this game, Gore?
Because they're very far ahead and 5 people have Fire Giant?
That, and also it's Kana at 505 yet again on this Cthulhu,
yeah,
and that's when everything changed in Game 1, right? Once Kana hit that 505 mark, everything went downhill. Not quite the same scaling potential, though, here, I think, for the Triangles. It's got to be a Phoenix defense, then scrap your way to full build. Set still a one level differential. Kana's finished off at level 20. Mid and jungle, Delta has farmed up quite well, made his way to level 20. A lot of ground to make up, really, in this duo lane. A combined 0, 10, and 10 for Mazega and Curve so far here in this game. You're going to need a bit more from this Ganesh and this Rom to successfully defend some of these birds.
And the Rom is, I think the very essential portion of that. Ganesh, again, being 0-5, well, first off, if he has any kills, then you're doing something incredibly wrong as a team. But also, he's running through Dharmic Pillars and then setup, right? If you die, you die. But as long as you get something out of it or your team is able to make something out of it, that's okay. The problem is that he's, died 5 times. Yeah, 8 assists, but nothing big has been able to really translate, especially not for Curve, who has affected 2 of 11 kills, right? And even still,
right.
They were only assists at that. I think we're looking at this ROM right now, or at least I'm looking at this ROM right now, as the biggest factor for the Triangles to get back into it, but also maybe the biggest factor as to why they're not in it right now.
Well, the fight is on their doorstep. The Triangles have to defend here. Delta looking for the turnaround fight, but the taunt's back in from Agent, and he's found the knock-up onto a Tori in the backline who has to dash away. Tongu has finished off the kill. Down goes the mid laner as well. No more Hevo, no more Morrigan in the backline of this fight for you. Kha'Zix needs to go big here for the rest of his team. Curve still alive, so still a chance to defend your base, but left side Phoenix now taken low. Mid lane being looked at. The Herberts are just going to keep running forward. The lockdown not enough to get rid of Kha'Zix just yet. But now 2 Phoenixes down, and in go the Herberts to the Titan room. 3 members of the Triangles circling around, trying to defend their base to avoid going out of this set. Lockdown onto Mazega. Is the damage there? The knockup sure is. Mazega is able to walk his way alive once more, though, but he's effectively TKO'd out of the fight until Sarpei shuts him down. Titan half HP. The Herberts are going to run away with the game. They'll take the set 2-1.
That's twice now. I think really where the Triangles, unfortunately, the jungle really didn't come up online the same way it did in Game 1. The last game, I think solo lane, the set was a very peculiar look at it. But, as much as I want to maybe harp on the duo lane, 0-12 collectively, It wasn't necessarily their fault as much as it was that Agent and Coast just knew what they were doing. They got Coast a lead early on. He was able to bully very hard with this Kronos. Agent as the Hercules, then Agent then as this Erlong Shin was just making it so much easier for them to lock down anyone and everyone they went up against. And that early game just transitioned into such big wins for the Herberts that they just got to control the duo lane like it was nothing.
Yeah, I think it's right that we take a look at Vapor's Coast here because, I mean, the game 1 that he had displayed a loss, and then game 2 and game 3, and Penta killing Mifflin all those years ago. I mean, it was just the stage was set for this guy to have himself a day here. So not surprised that a replay package largely centered around Vapor's Coast, more so I think the pentakill way back in the day. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for the SOC finals over here in EU. SPL waiting room coming up, and then the SPL starts after that.